Emotional only. You live?
We are live. Okay. Should we say hello?
Hello. I should do.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Rugby Chat. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, your best place for predictions and opinion. And tonight we are going to be doing our end-of-season reports for Australia, South Africa, and the other place, where? Argentina.
Argentina.
We've also heard some rumours around what might happen to the future structure of Super Rugby. So we'll have a little natter about that. And if we have time, then we may be talking about whether we show a waterfront stadium in Auckland or not. Hey Arshwin, since that was what we were talking about just now, we can always skip back and have a quick chat about that and tell Arshwin how he's wrong, because Eden Park is not such a wonderful place.
It is.
It's not. Anyway, without any further ado, that's Arshwin over there.
Hello, everybody.
In his Rugby World Cup 2015 jersey from the warehouse. Because that's where they were selling them, at least, I think.
I don't know. I probably got it as a present.
Did you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Same here, but
I usually don't buy clothes because I'm cheap.
Neither do I. My ex bought it from the warehouse when it was cheap. And Steve Harris, how you doing, sir?
No, very good. I only own 2 shirts. Sorry about that, but I do wash them on a daily basis. I just swap them out.
Oh, so that's not the smell then.
in his Northland jersey there. So is that some sort of referee's one or something, or how do you pick that one up?
Oh no, just a player issue, you know.
Player issue.
Player issue.
Yeah. From about 1990. Probably about 10 years old. But if you jump on the Northland website, you might be able to buy some merchandise.
Still.
Good pitch.
No.
Yeah.
And as you can probably guess, this was pre-GPS days.
Yeah, hang on. Yeah, there's no little pocket at the back there.
So, end of season reports. Let's start off with Australia then, and I'm going to throw it over to you. I'll think you furthest away. How do you think their season went?
D could try harder. It's not too difficult to, I suppose, sum up Australia, really, is it? And the fact that it really is just, I suppose, you give them a D. You could go worse. You wouldn't go higher. And when you analyse some of the things that we've said over the previous shows about Australia, it is basically does come down to could try harder, because we believe, as a starting 15 anyway, they have the player capability to at least put up a better performance.
Well, especially when you look at that team and go, there's not that many players different than the team that made it to Rugby World Cup back in 2015.
In the final.
The finals, yeah, sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, not just made it to Rugby World Cup. Yeah, Australia always make it to Rugby World Cup. That year they made it to the final. Go on, you're wrinkling your brow at me.
I think Warren Gatland pretty much summed it up. You really just sit back and wait until they make mistakes, and that's been the unfortunate thing for this Australian team. They are very much capable. They have got some attack in them, and they've got some really good attackers, and obviously Israel Folau, he's as good as any. He'd probably walk into most international teams around the world. I just some of the players that they've put in and out have just struck me as journeymen.
So who would you pick out of that?
Well,
put you on the spot.
Oh, you probably did. Originally Reece Hodge.
Yeah, but that was because he was being used in the wrong position, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, that could be probably more the problem. I do like the look of Karevi. He is so good with ball in hand, but he's a little bit like a turnstile when it comes to
defence.
Defence. I know usually there's. I'm just trying to think of their second 5. Kurandrani, I think, was their centre.
Karevi and Kurandrani both have been injured, unfortunately, this season, which caused them a problem at 13. Obviously, we have Beale at 12. Unfortunately for me, I guess this probably goes back for the best part of 10 years. Because we used to have sort of Beale, James O'Connor, Adam Ashley Cooper, and you kind of like, well, these are all really good guys. They're really good players, and we've still got them now with Folau, Dame Helmet Petty, players where, right, we're going to fit them somewhere in the back line, but I don't know where they're going to fit, because they don't. They can play too many positions.
If you go back, so you go back to the 70s, 80s, etc. as well, and Australian teams, obviously well before professional rugby at all. So you could say it's a different environment, but one thing that Australia's always had is the fact is that we've got a pool of talent that is really good, but not necessarily we've got a back to fit this position. So they've always shuffled their players around within their backline, if you know what I mean. And the fact is that, but they're intellectual players. They've always been, Australians. When you look at the where they come from within the system, they're coming through the private school system or public school system, depending on what part of the world you're in. But the paid school system, they're intellectual players. And they can understand that this is my position today and this is the role that I've got to play. They didn't necessarily have to play that position day in, day out. So even now, they have got the player stocks to do it. One name we haven't even mentioned is, first season sort of in rugby, the full season, Corabetti, right?
Yeah.
So the player stocks in the back line are definitely there. They struggle a bit at first five, but not an insurmountable hurdle, I think.
Yeah, we know they've got a lot of attack in them, but we mentioned players. Somebody like Kurtley Beale is a wonderful player, but we also know he's a heck of a liability when it comes to defence, and that seems to be a common
theme.
Yeah, a common thread with a lot of their backline options. I just mentioned Creevy before, great attacker.
Yeah.
But once again gets caught out defensively.
Yes.
They've got a lot of attack in them. They have to really address their defence. If you think of before they started the end of season tour, both against England and New Zealand, ironically they conceded 37 points in those two tests. That's just not good enough. Nah. And yet against Wales they only conceded the 3 penalties, 9 points. But I actually thought in that game they were the more likely team. But you once again think back to those opportunities when they played the All Blacks earlier in the year. I can think of that very first test where the All Blacks would get half a sniff. They'd be scoring at the other end, where the Australians would actually make good clean breaks, but a pass would be put down. So there were just little things. I know there's been a lot of investment gone into their skills coach, ex guy who was with New Zealand, Mick Byrne.
Yep.
I can see little incremental improvements, but I reckon the guy at the moment who should be counting his lucky stars that he's got a job as their defensive coach, Nathan Gray. Seriously?
A couple of things there. One of which is, I think it's ironic that the lowest scoring game of the November internationals was a game that was under the roof and not affected by wet weather. Which is ironic. But some things from the live chat. Ronin Rugby says that they should wear their terrific jerseys to match their rugby. And I'm not quite sure which jerseys he's referring to, but they're having some strange ones. Will Carter, I think Australia are not far off the mark. 1 year is time to fix things. They'll be good at the World Cup. They always are. Yeah, I think we need to be a bit careful about some of these kind of things we say, like France always turn up to every World Cup. They've kind of been slipping over the last couple. You've got to say, with Australia hitting their lowest ever world ranking this November, is how terminal that really is, and how much can you turn around in 1 year? I guess is the question.
They could turn around in 1 year. They as we've just alluded to. Yeah. Defence is something you should be able to fix if you get the right structures in place, right? So and that's what we're sort of saying. Hey, look, that's probably one of the biggest problems. The problem is that you can see that it's going to be hard to fix in a year with the same management team is the team culture. How do you change a team culture? And for the guys that are there to buy into this new culture under the old management.
Well, I mean, this question is do they need a new culture? I mean, this was the same crowd that, as I say, made it to the Rugby World Cup final last time out. Just because they take women back to their hotels and break rules, does that? I mean, it's and the senior players as well. Maybe they're culture. But you come on to one of the pieces that's up there in the chat. One solo, Checker's abilities are the question for me. Christian goes, Australia needs to get rid of Checker. Charlene says, Ella Brothers, I wonder why Checker hasn't used his nous in the attack for the Aussies. And let's be honest, Ella even was the attack coach for England against Australia a couple of years ago on a temporary basis. Does Checker have something against? Isn't he
his own countryman?
No, well, is he a Randwick boy or where's? Because
yeah, he is a Randwick boy. Yeah.
So you'd think that he would be people like Ella are players he could actually drag in and use.
He's probably getting a lot of advice from a whole multitude of people at the moment, and I think he's just wanting to have trust in the people that he's got on board, which is really crazy. This is something we shouldn't forget. And you mentioned their record at the Rugby World Cup. I think they've probably got the second best record behind the All Blacks. Maybe a couple of Rugby World Cups, and there's multiple times they've actually they've gone deep into the competition as well.
So they've got 2 World Cup titles, and they've got a final, right? So they've made 3 appearances against England in 2003, and so they lost the final there. Right.
And they lost the final.
And they lost the final to All Blacks in 2015.
Yeah, I was going to say
4 trips to find the big dance.
Yeah, who's in there, Paul, at the Rugby World Cup?
Wales and Fiji and Georgia. But I'm looking at that Fiji-Australia game. I think it's. I'm trying to remember if that's the opening round or not. So Fiji would be fully rested. There's no short turnaround, so depth of squad isn't a problem for them. That could be one of the biggest games of the World Cup. Fiji, could they make it into those quarterfinals?
So is that right? So I mean, we'll digress from the 3 teams that we're doing end of season report on, but Fiji, when we're going a year ahead, your Fiji, do you rest your players against Wales and target Australia, or do you actually have a go at both Wales and Australia? Because you just need to win one of those games, don't you?
Well, as I say, I think from memory that the Fiji Australia game is actually the first game that they play. So
it actually lines up nicely for Fiji.
So hence you go for that one and you see and
you get a second crack against Wales
if you need to.
And they've just beaten France.
Yeah. We shouldn't forget that these teams will be geared and ready for the World Cup. I mean, so that was a great result from Fiji against France, but it's a team coming towards the end of its season in Fiji, which makes it an even more meritorious win. But also the French can be the French. Sometimes they're more than capable of losing to Tonga in World Cup and almost unlucky not to knock the All Blacks over.
Over here in 2011.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. You know, it's next year's a completely different year. We never. You know, sometimes we never remember what we. Like fish and chip paper, what we did last week.
Well, I think you go leading into 2011. The All Blacks lost their last rugby championship game against the Australians, so the Australians actually won the rugby championship in 2011.
Yeah,
I think I'm not 100% sure on that, but there's something along those lines that sticks in my head.
Like that. One thing I think Australia has to address just in their forwards as well. I don't really know if they've quite got that loose forward mix correct. Yeah. I mean, so I'm a huge fan of. I don't know whether he's injured or not, but I'm a massive fan of Scott Higginbotham. I just think he.
Oh wow! That's not where I thought you were going.
No, I didn't know. Yeah.
I'm not too sure why he's not in the mix or whether he's interested. Maybe one of our learned followers of the show can tell us. I think he's a superb number 8. Big, physical, get you over the game line, and just let Pocock be a 7, because I don't think those 2 7s were. I don't think they're getting enough,
not working for them.
I don't think they're getting enough value out of Hooper as well. I mean, to say, I think he's been nowhere near his best this year. And then there's the other tall, rangy flanker that's on the other side of the scrum. Dempsey, I think is.
Dempsey. I thought you were going with Ned Hannigan.
Yeah,
Hannigan. Beg your pardon.
Ned Hannigan. That's what I was saying. Yeah.
So actually, everyone, please book out the 21st of September next year now, because it is potentially the biggest day, bar the whatever it is, bar anything else. Don't know what's your problem.
We've just lost the.
No, we're all good. We're still alive.
Okay, cool.
So the opening game is Japan.
No, something's gone, man.
Is Japan Russia? Yeah. It's all looking good on there, so we're good. We're still live. We're still going.
Cool.
So Japan Russia is the opening on the Friday, and on the Saturday we have Australia Fiji, followed by France Argentina, which will be a key one in that one because England are obviously the top of that group, and if France or Argentina slip up against, the USA will be targeting one of them to try and get that 3rd place in that table, and then New Zealand, South Africa. I mean, that is 3 crunch games on the second day of the Rugby World Cup, so it needs to happen. So you need to be aware straight away, because that's going to be a big day for you. And then you can have a sleep in the next day where you've got people like Italy, Namibia, Ireland, Scotland, and England, Tonga. But that Saturday is one that I would keep clear, folks.
just in terms of Australia, I think obviously be a lot of pressure coming on. I would imagine there's a whole heap of pressure on the CEO, Raylene Castle.
What we're hearing in the last few days.
At this time, we also heard that Jake White had also thrown his hat in the ring as well.
Well, that was an interesting one because, like, apparently there was a scheduled phone call, but it got leaked, so they cancelled the phone call or something. I don't know. There's some interesting stuff going on over there.
Do you think that was a good thing to cancel the phone call, or do you think there are two ways of looking at this? One is you've just turned down a proper potential coach. The other one is you've made a statement saying we're not going to play our coaching discussions in public, Mr. Jake White. If you're going to leak things to the press, that's not impressive. So there are two ways of looking at it.
So it was Jake White that gave the heads up on the.
Well, I wouldn't want to get sued by him for saying that.
Yeah.
But that's kind of that's the intimation I've read in the press is that that it came out of his camp rather than the Rugby Australia camp, the leak, and then Rugby Australia said, "Well, we're not playing that game, mate." So what do you?
Oh, Jesus, it's a hard one, mate. It's a mess.
Ducks and drakes.
Exactly. It's a mess over there. I think all we can do is focus on the players that they've got and see what they can do with what they've got.
Interesting, some of the stuff coming off the chat. A lot of love for Wales.
Oh, I think Wales will top the pool. I think that's very true. And it is a question of can Fiji or Georgia topple Australia and sneak it into the quarterfinals?
Not Georgia. I don't think their game's quite rounded enough. I think they'll probably give Australia a lot of give them a workout up front. No question, because we all know they love the scrum.
They just don't have backline.
No,
I agree. I'm not a great. A lot of people say kind of like Georgia. Oh, they should be in the Six Nations. Oh, they're one of the top tier 2 nations. I'm like, when they beat a tier 1 nation for the first time ever, then I'll start taking them seriously. But they never have done. They lost. So that's my big. So yeah, I agree. Fiji.
Who would win out of Japan, Georgia?
I'd say Japan.
Yeah, Japan.
Yeah. So basically, what we're saying is that they've got decent players. It's a coaching issue. So Checker to go, or do you think he just needs to replace his assistant coaches?
Well, Steve's alluded to the fact that Nathan Gray's the defence coach, and you do have to wonder, well, what credentials does he bring to the job at an international level? What time does he put in the bank to be able to say, oh, yeah, he's a great defences coach? Most of his time in around rugby is around the Waratahs. You look at him, it's not exactly those delivered consistent, spectacular results to say, oh, yeah, we've got to pick the coaching staff out of that lot because they did such a good time there.
And usually sometimes in a losing effort, at least one or two players put their heads above the parapet, but nobody really has.
No.
And that's the problem. A couple of questions have just come out. Do they look at new players? I think they may have to look at.
There's nobody there though.
Well, they have got some good, like I mentioned Higginbotham before.
So here's the problem.
Do you want to go back to Quade Cooper? He's a good footballer.
Well, we've talked about that. I don't know. I can't remember if Steve was in that conversation, but there's a fact is that when you've got when the cupboard's empty at first 5, Quade Cooper's not that bad that you discount him, right?
So but basically, they've got 4 Super Rugby teams. They've got the best players out of those teams. There's maybe 1 or 2 here or there you could change.
Yeah.
But on the whole, you couldn't throw out that entire squad and pick another squad.
Because
it's not about changing players. It's about whether. So to me, we agree that Nathan Gray needs to go.
Yeah.
And the other question is around Larkham. Now, something that I've heard that's potentially off. I've heard it via a podcast, so it's out there in the public domain via Green and Gold Rugby. Thanks, guys. But apparently, an off the record chat he had in a bar when they were in Ireland or in the UK anyway was that Nathan Gray mentioned something along the line. Sorry, not Gray. Steve Larkham made something along the lines of basically our boys don't have rugby brains. We were trying to make it a player-led kind of game plan, and they're just not bright enough. Now, that's to me.
It's cutting.
I think Larkham has to go because that attack also hasn't really fired, and we know they've got attacking players.
Well, it's interesting. It's how it changes from what I mentioned to Steve. You go back to the 80s, 70s, 80s, and the 90s, and you had that's the one thing that you saw in Australian rugby players is that they might not have been the best around, but their intellect level was far superior to their oppositions, and they usually beat them because they used their brain.
Arsenal's not a big fan of farmers.
Farmers?
New Zealand. Well, that's what most New Zealand players came from. Back in the day.
I didn't mention Taranaki at all, mate.
Okay.
Look, I mean, it's just the
No, so basically Australia degrade, need some coaching changes. Is the message there, and that's pretty much the end of season report for them.
Yep.
Is that Checo, you need to change your coaches.
See me.
But what Paul is saying, we could be here all night.
What I'm saying is
we'll get nowhere.
What I'm saying is we're moving on to South Africa now. So, before we move on to South Africa, though, please support the channel by sharing this content, telling all your friends and how wonderful and fantastic we are. We are working on some amazing plans for 2019. Can't tell you what they are right now, but hopefully they will come off. And so do spread the word and let all your friends know about us, please. And if you fancy supporting us financially, patreon.com/DrivingMaul to become a friend of DrivingMaul for as little as $1 a month. You can help us buy and try and buy one of these for each of these two guys. Because let's be honest, sound quality bit dodgy at times.
As a little boy waits.
And it is Christmas time. Father Christmas could bring them one of these if enough of you guys chip in. South Africa then, new coach, new selection regime, and up to 5th in the world, including a win over the All Blacks.
A lot to like after their previous year, and it just shows you what a coach. And I think there's a lot of respect for Rassie Erasmus, not just as a coach, but also a previous player. It's also a little bit more stability in selections. They haven't always had the guys like Faf de Klerk and a couple of other individuals on deck. I think they really do need those guys on deck all of the time. No disrespect to the other
guys that come in,
the other scrum halves. They've got.
He's a very young guy, but
he's not bad. But I like what Faf de Klerk brings to the table, so to speak. And
great hair, lots of clapping.
Yeah. They'll probably look back at a couple of games that they got beaten. Namely probably the England game, which they probably could have run. Didn't quite get across the line. We won't talk about TMAs and officials though. So
just interesting. I agree with you. Rassie is obviously coaching ability that he has, but he's got another thing that we haven't is the fact that he's got obviously a political ability, because he's been able to go into that South African political environment and get a decision turned over in terms of accessing European players. He's also gone in there and they've negotiated releases for Faf. This is like, during Super Rugby, right? And it's sort of saying, oh, hey, I know it's outside the international window, but can we borrow Faf for a couple of games against the All Blacks? And on the Northern Tour for the AIs, we'll give them back to you for in that international window. So he's not just the fact that he's able to run his team on the field, but he's able to do some backdoor politics type stuff as well. That helps his team out massively.
I see one of the guys, Christian, up there gives South Africa a C.
That's harsh.
Is that harsh?
Harsh.
I think maybe
B plus.
Yeah, Christian, maybe B plus.
B plus, totally, absolutely.
They played some good code this year, and I'll tell you what would actually take that stat up. A win in New Zealand. That's something you put a bit of tick on. Obviously, they lost. Did they lose a series to England and South Africa?
No, they beat England. They beat England 2-1 in that. And I thought that during that time, Rassie's selection, he tried a lot of players in those opening 4 tests against Wales up in Wellington, and then those 3 against England. And I think he was trying out a whole bunch of combinations. And as you say, towards the end of the year, had settled down, and we have a pretty good idea now as to what his first 15, potentially even 23ish is. But in that first 4, so and that's what he has only had. It was one of the interesting things that their defence coach mentioned was that it'll take them 9 games to get up to speed on defence, and game 8 is when we suddenly saw them actually closing people down and not conceding lots of points. Against England, let's be honest, they gave away big leads in pretty much all the 3 games, I think, from memory, and then had to come back. But they took that out of their. They rectified that before the end of the year.
There were times they just went a little insular. They went back to using their heavy forwards to just. Yep. And I think of that Wales game where they actually had a lot of territory, a lot of possession. And
didn't use the ball well,
and they just didn't. And they didn't use the ball well. They played a little bit of code, but when they were capable of just ranging a little bit wider. Now, once again, I've got to say that with Rassie Erasmus, is he the most chilled coach you've ever seen up in the box? He just looks really, really chilled, but I still think here's another case of him getting his selections not quite right. He's using Steph Dutoit as an open side flanker.
Right.
You know, I just think you, in this modern day, you still need somebody who's got a little bit more pace around the paddock. I mean, it's like Khaleesi was, I thought pretty good value.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't disagree. I don't know why he sort of gets such a hard time, and the fact that he really seems to perform on the field from what I'm watching. Yeah. I'm not really sure why that sort of. Oops, not the wrong one. That hasn't come through yet. No, I'm not really sure. So, the other thing is that I sort of think, when we go back to South African teams over time, it's they've generally not had a flyer of a 7, have they? They've always had a big guy. The back row was big, right across the board. So,
sorry, can you just tell them to refresh, because I think we are still broadcasting that it maybe not looks that way. So there is that, and I think, to me, the win in New Zealand would have been a loss if there'd been kicks. There were a lot of points left out there by New Zealand. So I do think that I think it is a.
Sorry.
I don't want to over sort of state as to how good that game they were in that game, but yes, they stuck in there and they did win it. Let's be honest. And so I do think they're much improved, but as I say, they've only had the 13 games, 14 games? 14 games this season. He's got another 5. He's only had 19 games to get from taking over to the Rugby World Cup. I think he's done the right thing in figuring out what is basically his first 23 years. And I expect to see him to stick with that and just have to pray that injuries don't derail them, because I don't think he's had time. He hasn't got time to do the depth thing. And he did take a bit of flack towards the end of the season about not rotating some players for that final Welsh game. But it's kind of like that Wales are the third best team in the world. You don't go trying out new combinations when you're playing third best in the world. You play your best team, and as I say, he hasn't had time. This is not like Steve Hansen, who's had the full 4 years, or Checker, or Eddie Jones, who should, or someone like not Conor O'Shea. Who's the guy that's in charge of Ireland?
Sure. Joe Schmidt.
Joe Schmidt, there we go. Thank you. Who've actually had time to properly build depth. I mean, like Joe Schmidt has done, like Steve Hansen has done. He's only had a year to do this, and that's what he's got to do.
Oh, they're going to be an awkward.
They're going
to be a really awkward team. That game between the All Blacks and South Africa, it's
a very intriguing World Cup. We've just covered off the Wales, France, Fiji thing, and when you look at it, All Blacks, South Africa, whoever loses that comes up against Ireland, and out of Ireland, South Africa, All Blacks, somebody goes out in the quarterfinals. So
I'm going to put my English jersey on.
Put your English jersey on.
Okay.
Hey up.
Now, hey up, lad. So I'll be honest. What I'm praying for is the Box to beat the New Zealand in that opening game.
Yes.
That puts New Zealand and Ireland in the other half of the knockout phase to England.
Right.
If South Africa beat New Zealand, England can make it to the Rugby World Cup final without beating one team above them, without actually facing one team above them in the world rankings. Wales will be on the other side. So the other side of the draw will have Wales, Ireland, and New Zealand.
All the teams above England.
All those teams above England. The other side of the draw will have England, South Africa, I'm not sure who the other two, Australia or Fiji. So, yeah, teams that England have beaten recently, as opposed to teams that England have not beaten recently. So that's my that's my dream scenario that sees England making it to the Rugby World Cup final. So for those of you who might hear me say, "Oh, there's a possibility of England making it," it's not because I'm expecting them to beat lots of good teams. It's because I'm expecting them to hopefully avoid lots of good teams.
Good side of the draw.
Crikey, you need to do a bit of analysis on the draw for the English fans.
Wow. Yes, sorry. If you hadn't guessed, I'm a bit of a rugby nerd. There you go.
Now, look, at the end of the day, I easily, so just going back, no way a C, definitely a B+.
I go B rather than B+. Yeah. I go B rather than B+.
I'll be honest.
They lost 2 games on the November tour. They lost
to
England and Wales.
Yeah, I suppose that's the hard part. I mean, but they got unlucky in losing the one to England. And, Faf doesn't go off in Johannesburg, and they win that one as well.
Oh, and they got lucky. They got lucky beating France. So it swings and roundabouts.
All right.
So, but
you know what? I think when we talked about this the other day, it's just like, what this if the current trend of internationals continues, then it's great for it's going to be great for rugby next year. We're going to have some good rugby to watch next year because teams, 1 to 8 can actually beat each other.
Yeah, and with all these different permutations possibly at the Rugby World Cup, it's lots and lots of articles I can write, videos I can do.
Yeah. He feeds off negative content.
Argentina?
Yeah, so where are Argentina? So let me just remind you as to what their year looked like.
Yeah, remind us of what their year looked like, Paul.
They lost 2 games to Wales and then to Scotland in their juniors nationals. At which point they decided that, you know what, this coach, our players don't like him and they're not playing for him. And so they threw him out and got Mario Desmarin. They followed that up by going out and then winning, beating, I think, did they beat South Africa and Australia? Did they get 2 wins in the Rugby Championship?
I believe so. Oh, yes, they beat Australia at home.
And everyone was like, okay, this looks like that Argentina are heading in the right direction. And then they go on tour in November and they lose all 4 of their games to who they lost to. Who they lose to? They lost to Ireland. They lost to France and Scotland, as well as then losing to the Barbarians, or basically South Africa B with a couple of friends. South Africa. Sorry, not South Africa B. South Africa with a couple of friends, losing to a drop goal. I mean, wow. We had 4 drop goals in the November internationals.
This is like, wow, that we had so many drop goals. But you're allowed to do a drop goal as a Barbarian, though. I don't know. Some of those, the Barry Johns and the like will be sort of like going, hey, with the Barbarians, we run it.
Absolutely. So it's kind of interesting that, they went down that route. So a lot of positivity when Mario Desmond took over. Have we kind of, has that kind of, have we kind of lost that a bit?
Oh, look, in the way that we're sort of giving the results out as in Australia and D, you could definitely say Argentina's the kid that gets a C, in terms of the fact that they just sort of doing what they do. They're not really going above and beyond what they need to be doing. I don't know if that makes sense. And your average C kid at school, it basically sums up Argentina.
Yeah, I was going to say the game that probably sums up Argentina the most was the return match against Australia.
Yeah,
that they played at home, and they were leading by. What were they leading by?
Oh, I don't know.
30, I think it might have been. It was about 30-7, something like that. Really and truthfully, they were in a situation where they should never lose, and they end up 31-7 at half.
31-7. Your memory is fantastic. Well done, sir. Good.
Absolutely.
37. This is why he's a professional commentator.
and to lose, and not just to lose, but they actually lost that going away. So I don't know what was said during the halftime break or whatever they were sniffing, but it obviously didn't work. And to me, that game sums up their whole year.
It's interesting. So it absolutely. Well, it sums up not just the whole year. It sums up Argentinian rugby, right? Every time we sort of think, here we go, they're on a rise. They're performing. Again, they've got the players to be able to put the results on the paddock, but they just don't seem to do it. And on the other flip side of it, it shows that Australia is exactly what we said, is basically under-delivering big time.
Well, one thing we can basically state as a fact: their scrum is no longer the colossus that it used to be.
When we used to do our shows, it's just like the classic cliches. Oh, France can win any game. You never know which French team's going to turn up. Actually, these days you do. And Argentina, and Argentina. Oh, got to be careful of their scrum. You've got to watch out for their scrum. It's like, no, you don't. It hasn't been like that for quite a few years.
Yeah, Christian makes a good point. Argentina, they do need to learn how to play for 80 minutes, but I'd also say that they've got to get their set piece right. Their set piece has been letting them down because we know they have got some. They have got some excellent backs there.
The scrum aside, there's been crucial times in their games when they've got an attacking line out and the line out goes awry, right? So these are key things when you've got momentum and it just lets the opposition off the hook.
And yet, I think they had the top line out stealer in Super Rugby playing for them, which is kind of like at the Super Rugby level, they've got a line out that really works.
Yep.
And then suddenly, I guess this comes down to what some people have said basically is that Argentina just flog their players by only having one team and by only selecting homegrown or home located players.
Yep.
Is that they just don't have that they're just overplaying their players.
Yeah, and if you stuck Buffelli, Mayano, and Dalgai in any other backline in the world, they'd rip up. You give those guys space.
Oh, what was it? I'm going to say Dalgai. He was the one in Dalgai. In Nelson, right, against the All Blacks, that just basically turned like 4 or 5 All Blacks inside out in one run, sort of thing. So, they've got some class players out there with some good skills.
And to be fair with Lavanini, he's actually spent time on the field this year, which is a good thing. So he's obviously got his discipline sorted out. But yeah, they're one of those teams that can really excite you by scoring some amazing tries. I know that the game in Nelson, man alive, they created some really good opportunities. They just did not finish. And if you think back to that game, I think it was 71 minutes. They're down by 9 points. The All Blacks go on and end up winning by 20 points, and you scratch your head and you think to yourself, how did that happen?
Well, up to 60 minutes, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's it. They are. And the point made before that they've got to learn how to play for 80 minutes. Yeah, there are times they can play for 65 minutes, but they drop the ball. You kind of look at that their last test that they played against Scotland.
Yep.
Once again they had opportunities to put that game away, but they go. Scotland had one opportunity with 15 minutes to go, and Sean Maitland scores the winning try.
Because we always look at anybody playing Scotland like in Argentina or whatever. It's like, here's your opportunity to win up there, and it's just like, are we not giving Scotland enough credit?
Scotland are a wonderful team at home.
Yep. But so they are playing at home, but we always sort of give the opposition, here's your chance to knock a team over up there, or it's seen as an easy game. And as you say, they're a wonderful team at home. So actually, are we not giving them enough credit?
I don't think Scotland have lost, apart from that South Africa game.
Yep.
I think that's their only loss at home this season.
South Africa.
I think they won every single other game at home.
Yep.
Now, away from home, I think they lost. Well, they lost to the USA away from home. I think probably their only away win from home from memory was Argentina. Yep. So they are a team that are fantastic at home, but really struggle on the road. And they admitted that during the Six Nations. It's what they need to fix, and we'll see how they. And the problem for them is that the Rugby World Cup isn't being hosted in Scotland.
They
beat Canada as well away from home.
Yeah, they did play Argentina early in the year, 44-15, but I think that may not have been a very strong Argentinian side. But on saying that was an Argentina side.
I think it should have been. It was during the June window.
So it could have been.
They would have had all their players available. Scotland didn't tour with a full strength side But the problem at that point was that's when they were playing with. That was when they had their old coach, and the players just didn't want to play. Didn't want to play for him at all.
Yeah, they'd switched off.
Yeah. So I think that was a coaching issue rather than a player attitude issue with that coach, unfortunately. So yes, I think there were problems there.
Yeah, but still, they're going to be an awkward side next year, I suppose.
They're
okay. So Christian did say earlier in the chat that basically England have got to get out of their group first.
Yes.
Now
they're playing Argentina.
A lot of people said that England had the pool of death, and yet if you actually look at their pool now, their pool is England, France, Argentina, the USA, and somebody else who they will beat. I've forgotten who it is down at the bottom there. To be honest, but if you think about that, France now are ranked 9th in the world. Argentina are ranked 10th in the world. That is the easiest group to top. Every other group has got at least one top 8, if not 2 top 8 teams. Sorry, at least two top 8, if not 3 top 8 teams in them. They're the only pool with one top 8 team in it. England should top that group.
However, you have got Englishmen love French, so you got that game happening, and then you've got the Battle of the Falklands. So there's a bit of edge in the games there.
Let's just be honest. Every single game that England play has got edge in it because we ruled you all at one point. So, and you
damn it, India has to get a team in there,
and you just resent that fact. I mean, jeez. But so they, as I say, England to me actually have probably got the easiest group to get out of. Ireland have got to get past. Have got Scotland, and so they've got to top them. New Zealand obviously have South Africa, and then you've got Australia, Wales, and Fiji. So that's 3 of the top 8 teams in one pool. So, so in some ways. Canada is the last team. No, it can't be Canada.
No, Canada's in the All Blacks pool because they were the last.
Right. Canada are looking at trying to beat Italy to make a top 3 place. Yep. Italy have been extremely lucky in getting the 2 lowest ranked teams beneath them in their pool. Otherwise, Italy would not get automatic qualification for France. So, are you going to inform me as to who that 5th team is that England?
I'm actually just trying to find it, but the World Cup starts off on the Friday, September the 20th, and the opening game is Japan-Russia. If that's correct. If that's correct.
Yep.
And then the next day, we've got that Australia-Fiji game. Well, they both hit the ground running, and then
I kind of ran through this earlier. So that's the day.
You don't sleep. That's the day you don't sleep.
That's the day you don't sleep. Tonga. There we go.
Tonga versus England.
Now, Tonga.
Go you Tonga.
Go you Tongans.
Yes.
Yeah.
Get lots of German Tongans in there.
We'll do a fundraiser to get all their supporters over there. Yeah. Stadium full of red flags. Yeah.
It's fine. They'll all just dye their hair green. That was, hang on, was it Tonga or Samoa that did that? I can't remember. It was one of those 2.
No, I can't remember.
Being sponsored by Paddy Power back in
the last time. Yes.
The last time it was in fact, one of the players even changed his name by Deepole to Paddy Power. Brilliant.
Right.
So basically Argentina just need to get more players and not flog them to death. Now,
yeah, tough.
So some news now. Let's apparently, according to the Sydney Morning.
He's only had 1 beer too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty serious.
Really?
Yeah. Maybe more.
So, the Sydney Morning Herald have apparently said that one of the ideas on the table is for Super Rugby to go down to 14 teams and have a round robin, which would be obviously 13 games. Now, obviously, it wouldn't be the full home and away round robin. It would be a single game round robin for those 13 games, which, from memory, actually is a reduction on the number of games the teams play now, because currently it's 18 weeks. They get two buys, so they play 16 games. So this would actually be a reduction, which is a bit strange. So, and the suggestion is either they get rid of the Sunwolves. Some people have pointed out that Japan voted for France for the next Rugby World Cup. Oops. Maybe that was a poor decision. rather vote for South Africa. Or the other option is that one of the South African teams heads to Europe. Now, for my mind, unless the Pro 14 are about to start suddenly including a Georgian team or a team from somewhere else, they need two teams to go from South Africa rather than just one. So I'm not sure how whether that would actually really work, be feasible or not. But are you happy going backwards?
I think I made a comment on Twitter this week when I saw that come out and sort of saying, Super 14 seemed to be the optimal sweet point of the Super Rugby formats that we've been through. So I don't have an issue going back to Super 14. I think there's logistical issues that are a nightmare that I can't see how they'd get across. Not the fact of reducing the teams necessarily in Super Rugby, apart from Japan, but the talk of the South African teams going to Pro 14. Well, then it's not Pro 14, then it becomes Pro 15, 16, 17. And they've seen what happened to Super Rugby when they did it. If you're running Pro 14 up there that's got a successful competition, why do you want to put your competition at risk to accommodate some South African teams?
Well, the Pro 14 came out and said one of the reasons we are going to a conference style is because we are looking to expand in the future.
Yeah.
So they have already preempted and set expectations amongst their fans, which is something that Super Rugby is not very good at doing. Let's be honest. They're very good at not really knowing what they're doing next year. Never mind having any long-term vision. Objectives. My big problem with it, though, is twofold. One, we just talked about the fact that Argentina don't have a big enough player pool.
Yep.
They need two teams in Argentina.
Yep.
Everybody, absolutely everybody, wants a Fiji team in Super Rugby. And they would really like a Samoa and a Tongan team to join at some point in the future. This puts the kibosh on all of that. And so I think it's a very reactionary backward step from a bunch of Sanzar, I don't want to call them leaders because they're not leading, but Sanzar administrators that are that don't really know where they're going.
I haven't seen the Sydney Morning Herald's article, but I just saw the follow-up articles, and it's just like at the end of the day, it is one of many suggestions. So it'll be interesting to see what actually comes out of the mixer.
Yeah, just reading some of the comms up there. Generally, I think everybody can be in agreement with, I don't know if we need more teams. One question that I'm asking is, has the expansion helped Japanese rugby? Has it helped South American, Argentinian rugby? I say no.
Well, it's interesting. Argentina's got a double-edged sword. I think it's helped them, but then it's hindered them because of the number of games that the same players are playing. That's the issue they got. Yeah. The fact that they're playing in a good level competition has actually helped them, but now they're just playing too much rugby is the problem.
So, I mean, Japan have drawn with France since having the I think that was a season or two ago. Obviously beat South Africa at the last Rugby World Cup. To try and say it's not helped their national team step up, I think would be
incongruous.
That's a hard word.
I was just really my point was really more with Ashwin because they've had to roll out all these same players through Super Rugby. Haven't been able to really they don't have the luxury of Steve Hansen saying, "Oh no, we want those guys pulled out."
Yeah. We'll take 105 players
to play less minutes.
Well, actually, no, I would say that they have done that, and that's actually what's hurt someone. So for example, last season, prior to the June window, this year, prior to the June window, the Sunwolves had just beaten the Stormers in Hong Kong and the Bulls, was it? I think in Singapore. Anyway, they'd beaten two South African teams, and then they sent a second string side to tour Australia for 2 or 3 games because Jamie Joseph pulled all his international players to prepare for the June games.
Truckload of names coming up.
Right then, sorry about that, folks. We are back, and I will have to stitch them back together again. So we'll have to do that one more time. So sorry about that, folks. And for those of you listening on the podcast as well, yes, this will be stitched together for you. We unfortunately dropped out there What is your overall? I mean, probably, what is your overall feel for this Super Rugby? Are you Steve? You're saying actually that maybe getting rid of the Jaguares and the Sunwolves might be actually a good thing for them.
It'll be a hard one now because you've already got that fan engagement, especially if you see some of the, like every Sunwolves game I see, there's usually a packed house, and they're well supported, and they have, to be fair to them, they've both improved as well. The Jaguares, didn't they make the top 8?
Yeah, they've been in the playoffs this year. Yep.
Yeah, they were in the playoffs.
Last year as well.
And
this is the first year.
And the Sunwolves, they put up some really creditable performances at time. They still have that capacity to fold at times, but I have been noticing that it seems like their roster's getting stronger. I see they've just signed Sean McMahon. Is it?
Yep.
From Aussie.
Yeah, from Australia. He's a very good footballer. Obviously, they've
and Rennie Ranger.
Yeah, they signed Rennie Ranger as well. There's a couple of others. I think the guy Burley from Phil Burley from Canterbury has signed with them. So they have got some good personnel, so to speak. And I just can't think of the blonde-headed loose forward South African guy who was Willie Brits. He's normally a ball of energy when he. They are quite an enjoyable side to watch, but you also know.
And if you add in Hayden Parker and Little.
Oh yeah, Michael Little.
Michael Little. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was. What they've done is they've built up a bunch of international players there where they can rotate and they can rest their Japanese players, which is the thing that the Jaguares have not done. And I think that's a big difference between the two sides on that one.
Yeah, Hayden just came back and feels like, there's a bit of that as well, Hayden, if you're obviously viewing. I tend to agree with, and that's the point that I made, that they do get some wonderful support up there, and that's something you're not going to throw away. When you think back to the Kings module, I mean, so that was horrible tuning into those games and seeing that big stadium with just seagulls in the reserves.
Well, here's the interesting thing, though, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the Sunwolves don't play bad rugby. No. It's why do people actually tune in to watch a Sunwolves game? Why do they get people turning up to the ground there? Obviously, this Japanese, they love rugby and they just want to see some rugby. But there's also the fact that their team plays good rugby. They might not come out on the right side of the ledger, but they play good rugby that people want to go and watch.
Also
tune into.
Also had a little bit of comment about the problem with the one-round system. You won't see these return derbies that we all love over here, but you almost get the impression they don't often say it, the All Black coaches, but you almost get the impression that they're not fans of them.
No, they're not fans of them.
Okay. They don't like to see their players getting bashed up.
For us, and when I was a season ticket holder, when I was living in Auckland and was a season ticket holder in Arsenal and I used to sit next to each other in the West Stand, I got upset that I wasn't going to see one of two of the Super Rugby sides, two of the New Zealand Super Rugby sides playing at Eden Park. I would only see 2 out of 4. I think it was, and that was I didn't like that. So I think home and away for the domestic teams is a must. Because as a season ticket holder, I want to see the Chiefs, the Crusaders, the Hurricanes, and the Highlanders. And I want to see some South African teams, some Australian teams. I'm not really that fussed who, to be honest with you, but adds a bit of variety in. But I want those local derbies.
So effectively, by saying that, you're okay with the conference system.
Oh, I love the conference system. Yes, that's right. Let's go. I think you could reduce the amount of travel, which is a big issue here.
Yep.
And also you can expand it up to 50, 60 teams if you wanted to.
Yeah. The only thing I see with the conference system that's an issue is the final standings in the table, right? And that's easily solved. Is the fact is that you've still got to pick X amount of teams out of your 3 conferences, but once you've got them in your table, they finished in where their points are. Simple as that.
Conference systems are enough. Conference systems are nothing new. You only have to look at the American sport to figure out. Sometimes you can get the best teams in the one, whether it's the Eastern Conference or the Western Conference. We're having power issues now. One of those conferences, and sometimes not necessarily the best teams always come through. The problem is it's one of those things. There's so much rugby and so very little time. Where do you lock it all in? And we all.
So I think to me the problem with the conference system was that the first conference system they came up with was confusing because you had different sized conferences and you had 3 teams from the South Africa conferences and 5 teams from the Australian conferences, and it was, to be fair, it was confusing and it was extremely badly sold and explained by Samzar, and then basically everyone went, "It's because it's conferences." No, it's not. It's because it was badly designed conferences and badly marketed conferences. But since then, it's got a bad public perception, and just turning that round is nigh on impossible.
Yeah, we like to digress on this show, and one of the things that Paul and I have spoken about is that for some reason in the Southern Hemisphere anyway, and particularly within New Zealand, we just like to bag on anything that's rugby related. So, conference, you get something that's shiny and new. Oh, that's rubbish. We don't like that. That's not going to work. As opposed to embracing it. We don't go and say, "Oh, that's interesting," and embracing it. Doesn't matter what it is.
Oh, we are. I mean, so look how many people sort of in the early days when New Zealand Rugby went to the central contracting system. So, that's not going to work. You're going to run out of money.
Yep.
Why don't you just let the players go offshore and you can just pick them from anywhere around the world?
Yeah,
and now that seems to be the Ireland
have done it, and that's why they're successful.
Ireland's taking on board that. Yep. What I've heard, South Africa would love to do that if they had any money.
We're starting to give a little page.
Yeah, we can start a give a little page for Springbok Rugby. So gee whiz, there's no silver bullet. I think the conference system works for New Zealand because of our size and because we're isolated down here, and we're fortunate we got a team that's got a damn good winning record. Might be a lot harder if we didn't have a great.
So do you find it interesting, rugby public? Oh, our rugby's getting stale and boring. Okay, we'll bring in more teams. Oh, there's too many teams in there, and they don't have the caliber. Well, it's just like, what do you want? Do you want stale and boring, or do you want new teams coming through?
And I think there's I did an article a couple of weeks ago now that was. Does New Zealand Rugby / Super Rugby need fixing? And I think on the playing side, no, it doesn't. We're producing, or New Zealand is producing, the best rugby team in the world, and it has been doing so for the best part of a decade, or more than a decade actually. Whereas on the financial side, there are some serious issues with New Zealand Rugby. They are going to start running what they termed as a unsustainable deficit. And they need to fix that by basically engaging grassroots, engaging the public more, and getting proper tribalism in these Super Rugby teams, and in these and make them proper. If you go and talk about Battle of the Bays, or Battle of the Bridge, or Battle of the Bombays, there's nothing like that in Super Rugby. We don't have Battle of anything in Super Rugby. There was one attempt at
they try to do it with the Chiefs, but it doesn't really work because part of the Chiefs' territory is actually the north side of Bombay Hills.
It doesn't really work. Also, if you try and manufacture it, and you use Maori land war references, that just
oops, fail. Well, that was the Hurricanes and
the Hurricanes. Chiefs, the Hurricanes trying to do that. That's because Taranaki had changed from one franchise to the other, and that was a very, very poor choice of
marketing strategy.
But even so, we don't have those rivalries, and Super Rugby sides have been around for 25 years, is it now?
96.
24 years. So these sides have been around long enough to create rivalries.
Yeah,
they should have happened by now.
Yeah, as Hayden's just alluded to, Crusaders, Highlanders be the only one.
Totally.
There is Well, more from the Highlanders side, I feel, but yeah.
There's kind of a little boy. The underdog Highlanders thing.
The little brother.
That's right, rather than little boy. Thank you. And also Lions. You also have Lions, Bulls, and stuff like that over in South Africa, but those are their Super Rugby sides are very closely tied to their provinces. And you also have Tars Brumbies is quite a good one, and also Tars
Reds
and Tars Reds as well.
But the only problem with the Tars Reds is that they're so focused on beating each other up that they forget to play rugby.
Hello, Christian.
Sorry about technical issues, folks. There are some, but they're not as well. They're not as ingrained as we've seen it. We've had technical issues, but we've soldiered on through a full show. So, Arsene, thank you very much for putting us up and for the beers. Spates, if you'd like to send the money, it's the check in the post. Much appreciated. And thank you very much, Steve.
No, not a problem. Always a privilege and a pleasure.
And the biggest thing of all, thank you very much for watching and for listening. Hanging around. It's been an absolute pleasure having you with us tonight. I'll be back tomorrow night. Home will be hosting the All Blacks edition. So I think I'll be back, and one or two of these guys will also be. So join us for that on the All Blacks edition show. And just so you know, the season may be over, but our season isn't. This show will go on, and we are looking at trying to actually even do a couple of recorded shows for Christmas and New Year to push it on straight through every week at 8 p.m. Tuesday time. So do check in. Anything else, boys?
No, that's it.
Bye.
See you guys. Bye.
Oh, don't forget to be on Patreon.